Hi, and today I'll be beginning a series of lessons that, well, in HTML. I will need you to understand that HTML is like the foundation or the backbone of every web page you see online. Okay. So in the previous lesson, I did a series under the title Foundations of Web Development. And I shared several technologies. I introduced several technologies which are used in web development. And one of the very essential ones is HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext Markup Language is a language, although it's a language, we'll learn a lot about it, that it's not a programming language, it's a markup language. So in previous videos, I spoke about technologies such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript. CSS are for cascading style sheet, JavaScript, PHP, MySQL, and the like. And we said some are front-end technologies, some are back-end technologies. Now, the front-end technologies kind of draw more in the browser. So the files are sent directly to the browser to interpret. So HTML files are interpreted by the browser. CSS files are interpreted by the browser. JavaScript files are interpreted by the browser. And these technologies are known as front-end technologies. However, there are other ones too that are interpreted by the server, the web server on which your files well. So they are interpreted and their output is sent to the browser. Such technologies are known as back-end technologies. Okay? The back-end technologies. In some cases, you also see the server-side technologies. So they are mainly of two forms, the front-end technologies or the client-side technologies, the back-end technologies or the server-side technologies. Now, the main distinction between them is who interprets what. So if a browser interprets the technology, then it becomes a front-end. Okay. And if the server interprets that technology, then it becomes a back-end. Okay. And we have SQL, we have PHP, we have Python, we have Ruby. All of such technologies, PHP, are interpreted by the server, which means that if you have to work with those technologies, you need a server, right? In HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, you wouldn't need a server. All you need is a browser to interpret your results. And so, us doing HTML, we spend a lot of time in our browser. Whatever coding or whatever changes we do, we would like to see them being interpreted in the browser. So it will be an informative journey. I'd like you to join me on this journey. And we are going to talk about first the introduction of what HTML is. And we are going to, in the next lesson, we are going to talk about HTML5. So there are various older versions, or there are even, there are several versions of HTML. And current technology resides on 5. And there is a reason why 5 is special, and it has new features. So our conversation will dwell more on the 5. We'll look at the head as well, what goes into the head. And we understand what we mean by the head, and we understand what means by the body, okay, based on how the structure of the HTML is. And we'll talk about forms. If you ever filled the form online, or maybe checked your email online, and you've used the form, also to ask you for a user word and password, and check your credentials against an existing database. If it's correct, if it's not, a flags and errors is correct. All of that activity is made possible through HTML. Now, why HTML is important is that every single page that lives on the internet has HTML. So you need to get your foundations right. It has HTML. And I'll say if you write even back-end technologies, that are PHP, and they will, at the end of the day, be interpreted by the server, and the output will be in the form of a script, which is like a JavaScript, which is going to be interpreted by the browser, because the browser cannot directly interpret PHP. It wouldn't directly interpret Python. Okay. So it's going to be in the form of HTML, CSS, or a JavaScript. Okay. It's going to be in the form of a technology that the browser can interpret, because the browser is what users deal with. They don't deal with HTML. In our previous lesson, I explained how um, sending a request to a server works. And I highly recommend that if you haven't seen that video, maybe after this video, you should make time and then go through the foundations of web development. It doesn't involve any coding, but it has a lot of information to set your foundations right, to know what is happening and understand what is happening in the background. Okay. So today we'll talk about the introduction of what HTML is. In my conversation, I said I made mention that HTML is not a programming language. Okay? So sometimes we'll see that listed. So what are some of the web programming languages I need to know? Well, I'll tell you HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, basic things. But at the end of the day, they are actually, HTML is actually not, if you go into it technically, it's not a programming language. It's because programming languages are designed to handle something we call logic. That is conditionals. That if maybe a user enters this, do that. If he enters that, do that. So if a certain condition is met or a certain condition is true, take a particular route or take a particular procedure. Programming languages generally do that. HTML isn't designed to handle logic. It's just for presentation. Okay. So the output presentation, and it helps that document maintain its structure. So it's for two things: the structure and presentation, nothing else. No logic, no logic handling, no calculations, nothing of, just for presentation. So get that in mind. That when you need a language that needs to do any logic on your front end, then you can consider JavaScript, because JavaScript is a front end language and it's able to handle logic. Okay. So I said over here that HTML is designed to control the structure of a web page. Simply that. Cannot cannot perform any logic based on any condition, which is considered as a key trait for every programming language. And when we come to programming languages such as Python, Ruby, SQL, all those programming languages are designed to handle logic in one way or the other. Okay. If a certain condition is met, take a certain route. Or if a certain condition is true, implement something. And apart from that, they have other functions, but this is a very clear distinguishing function, or this is a very clear distinguishing factor that allows you to distinguish between programming languages and markup languages. Another markup language is called XML. XML is Extensible Markup Language. And even though you may see code in it, it is not a programming language. It is not designed to handle logic. So get that in mind. So I said over here that even though it's not a programming language, it's crucial to understand. It's crucial to understand because every single page living on the internet, every page you request for has HTML in it, because that is what the browser uses to control the structure of the page and to maintain, let's say, the presentation of the page. Okay. We'll come to what CSS also does. CSS is for aesthetics or the looks of the page. Okay. Nothing else. No logic whatsoever. So always understand that these key elements play a very good role in maintaining the structure and maintaining the appearance. CSS is appearance of the page. Okay. And I said that HTML can independently exist in a web page. So you can have a page that is solely HTML, and I'll demonstrate that as we go along. Okay, I'll demonstrate that as we go along. It's just solely HTML, and you still have a page existing. You don't have a CSS in it. You don't have a PHP in it. You don't have any other thing in it, and it still works. However, a CSS page cannot exist without an HTML. Okay? A JavaScript page can exist, but without an HTML. So there have to be a defined structure of an HTML before a JavaScript can play in it, before a CSS can play in it, before PHP can be interpreted by the server and the output can play in it. So without HTML, you don't have any structure. And when you don't have a structure, you don't have a web page. Okay. Let's talk about some tools which we'll use in our development. Okay. I said earlier that the browser is a very crucial thing when it comes to HTML development. Because whatever changes we make, the browser will need to interpret our HTML files. Okay. Because HTML is more like a front-end language. So when you meet someone in the future and you say, oh, I'm into front-end technology, so I'm a front-ender. Or yeah, sometimes you see online that, oh, we are hiring a front-end technologist, or we are hiring a front-ender. What that simply means is that we are hiring someone who plays very well with front-end technology such as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay. And of course, there are frameworks. I won't talk about them too much in this class because this is more of a lesson focused on HTML. Frameworks make your work easier, and sometimes they use other languages to make your work easier. So there are JavaScript frameworks that helps you do very cool interfaces. Okay. Yeah, that helps you very cool, such as maybe Vue or several other JavaScript, React. So some of them are libraries, some of them are frameworks, and they help you do very cool interfaces on the front end. However, you have to understand that our class will be, or this conversation will be limited to HTML. So we'll talk more, we'll do more on HTML and other languages. First, let's look at what the web browser options are. So I said here that HTML files run in the browser. They are client side. I've explained that earlier. And so it doesn't need a server. If it's a server side like a PHP, a Ruby, a Python, which other language, SQL, then you need a server to interpret your results. Okay. And the output is sent to the browser for the user to see what they requested. But in HTML, all you need is a browser because the files are sent directly from the server without any interpretation, okay, or without any compiling. They are sent directly from the browser to they are sent directly from the server to the browser, okay, and which is helpful. The browser will interpret the results. All right, so the options we have on the table includes browsers such as Firefox, Chrome, Microsoft Edge. We have Safari. These are Safari is more on Apple devices. Chrome is more on Microsoft devices by default. No, Edge is more on what do I say? Edge is more on Microsoft devices by default. Safari on Apple devices by default. Now, these other two browsers, the Chrome and the Firefox and the Chrome are independent of devices. Chrome is developed by Google, and Mozilla developed Firefox. Why? But these two come as top for developers because they have a lot of cool development tools, which sometimes users developers prefer. So I said over here that Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox comes as the most used because their engines are regularly updated and they have useful developer tools. And we'll see that as we go along, as we play along, we'll see, oh, see, these are some of the tools that exist for developers in doing development work with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and the like. Now, another thing we'll need, so the web browser is for interpreting our results. Okay? For interpreting our results. However, we will write code. And like I said, even though it's code, it's not a programming language, it's a markup language. Okay? So we will need a code editor, something that can help us, simple text editors, something that can help us write code. You can even use plain text or text edits to write your HTML files, and it will work. However, if you have text editors like Sublime Text, Atom, Notepad++, TextMate, these make your work easier because they have Zen coding built in them. So they are able to color portions of your code for you to really, and when you are making errors, they guide you. Okay? They guide you. You color coding and nothing. So they have useful things that help you build faster. Okay. And the other thing is an IDE. So Sublime Text, you go online and you see the symbol. It's free to download. However, you might need a license along the way. And if you don't get a license, you can still use it, except that sometimes you get a pop-up which says that, oh, pay for this license for this. And when you close the pop-up, you are good to go. It doesn't stop you. But sometimes the interaction of pop-ups will get in your way. The other IDE, the other thing is you can usually use an IDE. An IDE is like an integrated development environment. And what does that is it has tools for developers for programming, mainly for programming. So you can program in several languages in an IDE. You have support systems for several programming languages. And one of the free ones you can download is Visual Studio Code. It's available for Macintosh users, it's available for Windows users, and it's free. So you can download it and then it's developed by Microsoft actually. You can download it and then use it. And for purposes of our teaching, we'll use the Visual Studio Code. And it comes with more advantages as a compiler. So later on, if you start and you get confident with it and you are doing programming in other languages such as PHP, Python, or Ruby, sometimes Python will require a compiler not a compiler per se, but an interpreter to interpret it. PHP will require an interpreter to interpret it. These have inbuilt interpreters that allow the programming language to be interpreted. Yeah. So we'll use Visual Studio Code as we have seen here. If you haven't installed, you can download your Chrome, you can download your Firefox, and you can download the Visual Studio Code by just going to their website and pick it up from there. Now, let's get into it, creating our first HTML file. The HTML file has the extension .atm. And you can create that file by simply having a .html file. Now, I told you that you can even use text edit. Okay, you can use text edit. And I want to demonstrate how you can use text edit to create an HTML file. If you use text edit, make sure that the format you are viewing is plain text, okay, so that nothing else comes into the way. And you are viewing it in a very zoomed version. Okay. Oh, very good. So for purposes of teaching, I would like us to have it in a very Zoom version so that we can use it for our demos. We are trying to create an HTML file using a text editor, a normal text editor. So if you don't have any program installed that's able to handle programming, let's say you go to your boss's file, you want you to demonstrate something, and you don't have any tool at all, you can still use any normal text editor that resides on their computer. Okay. So first you have some HTML. All of these things will make sense as we start. Okay. I'm just trying to be as fast as we can. So I'll use a lot of copy and paste. So the basic thing we are doing is we are trying to create a structure of an HTML file without the use of any programming language. Without the use of any, I'll say, programming tool. So my website, and all right. And for the sake of alignment, I'll explain what I have done. So uh, this is a very basic format of an HTML file. Okay, the basic format of an HTML file, and at least we have this done. So it enables us see what we've done. Okay, so first we see some things like a tag. We call these things tags. Okay, so there's an HTML tag, there's a head tag, there's a closing head tag, there's a title, there's a closing one. The difference between the opening and the closing one is you find that uh, forward slash forward slash um, begins the tag name, begins the tag name. So you have the opening tag and you have its corresponding closing tag. You have an opening tag and you have its corresponding closing tag. You have the opening tag and you have its corresponding closing tag. So with this file, based on title, if I come here and I said that HTML files are saved in the format, if I come here and say, okay, well, I want to save this file in uh, a new folder called classes. And inside the class, I want folder in that class, which I'm going to name experiments. And I want to save, you see, instead of saving this as a Unicode text, I want to save this as my name, my file name index, and I want to, it needs to have the extension HTML or ATM. Any of them should work. So use ATM. Okay. Now I've saved this file in my a folder on my desktop called classes. Now, if I go into that folder, let's come into that folder real quick, called classes. And we go into experiment, we see the index files here. Note that you have the icon HTML file here. If I click to open, my web page should be opening. So this is my first web page. That is what I wrote in the file. So let's look at what is happening here. Here we have my website as a title. Okay, my website as a title. When we come into our text file here, you see the title of our website is my website. And in the body of the HTML file, you have inside the body, you have this is my first web page. Okay, and that is what has been written here in our first web page. So you can create an HTML file using a simple plain text like editor. This is not a programming editor. It doesn't have any inbuilt features. But you can see that we went through a lot doing that. But that's like the worst case scenario when you don't have any other option. Ideally, I advise that you create files or you create programming files using an IDE or using a code editor, which has encoding, which will assist you make your work faster. Unless maybe you hone your skills enough to really understand what you are doing to the code. These tools are designed to make your work faster. Okay, so that is what I would say for the web pages. That you can create a web page. You don't necessarily need to use a. And remember, this is Firefox running. That's Firefox running. You can also view that in Chrome. Okay, so we can go into the folder, our Finder here, and open this file in Google Chrome. Okay, because I have Google Chrome installed. And if you don't have that, you can choose to install that as well. So once I open it, you see that's that's the title of the website, and that is the content. Okay. So this is how a demo of how you can just create. However, I advise that you use tools that are designed for that work. This like using a bread knife to cut a piece of block. Okay. Even though the bread knife is not designed to cut maybe a piece of wood, it can do it, but it requires a lot of effort because it's not specialized, it's not a specialized tool for that. So you should use specialized tools for that kind of, okay. And so let's look at another case, another scenario where we can use a code editor like Visual Studio Code. Okay. Now, I want to open and demo how we can use that to create a website or a web page structure. Okay. So this is how, after opening my web page, this is how it looks. I can decide to start a new file, which is here, new. Just come here and then click new. Okay. A new file. And can say HTML. So a new file. And it opens the tab for new. Okay. By simply using Control or Command N, you start a new page or a new tab for new. Now I come here to select the language because there's a code editor. It can code in several languages, or there's an ID. You can code in several. So you can see Bash is here, BibTeX is here, binary, C programming, C#, C++. It codes in several languages. So there's C, SS files. I can also code in Django. So several languages, HTML. This is what I'm looking for. So basically, if I start from here, I can just search for HTML here, and it will give me that option. And then when I click on this, I see this symbol. Okay. This symbol helps me understand that I'm creating an HTML file. Okay. So if I write anything out, you see it's very small. But for the purposes of our demo, I like to zoom in a little. I like to zoom in a little so that we can use that. We can have a very good um, view. All right, so this is quite clear here. So now we are writing HTML. So I have two tags set up. The most important tags are your HTML opening and the closing. Okay. That specifies that an HTML file. I come here and then write the head tag. So one of the cool things is that I can, instead of writing head and then just, so when you come here, you see I wrote my head, then inside I came to write my title, then I closed it. One of the cool things with using an IDE or a text editor, that's for programming, is that you can do shortcuts. And one of the shortcuts is like HTML, this, and you get used to it over time. Once I do this and I hit start, once I do HTML and title and I hit start, you see it's created this for me. Okay. So instead of doing that, now I'm getting into my head. My head here. Inside the head, there's a title. So all I need to do is come here, tap, and then write head, title, and it creates this for me. Really, really cool. I can just write my second site. And then I come here and see body. Once I write body and hit tab, it creates the tags for me, the body tags for me, which makes my work faster. Okay, that's why I advise that you use an IDE. An IDE is able to speed up the flow of your work. Okay, you don't have to, provided you know what you are doing, you don't have to. So my header tag, initially we used, so we came here, when we come here, we say H2. Okay, instead of writing opening like H2 this way, H2, and then coming to close saying H2, no, we can simply come here and then write H2. Remember, I don't put it in any braces and hit start. Once I hit start, it opens and closes its form. Okay, and I can just write welcome to my second website. And that, you can see that that really makes my work very fast. Now we are saving the page. So I come here and then I go to my desktop and I want to save it in that same folder, my experiment. And because you see, I have written an untitled, it doesn't have any name yet. I give it a name. Over here, I decided to save it as HTML. It can be HTML or HTML. Okay, so I can also save it as about, my about page. And I save the file. Once I save the file, you see the name is updated over here. Okay, the name is updated at the tab column. This is a very cool thing. And I come into my folder. My experiments folder. I come into my experiments folder. I should see the about.html. And if I decide to open with Google Chrome, so my about has also opened. So this is the first website I did this on my first tab. The about is also on the second tab. Okay, welcome to my second website. So this website I created using the IDE. The IDE, as I explained earlier, makes your work faster or makes your workflow faster. Okay, now we are done with demoing with the text edit. So I've closed my text edit. but we'll still use the IDE, the Visual Studio Code over here from time to time. So we can minimize this, close this, and then also continue with our web pages. So I said that creating a web file, creating an HTML file, HTML files has the extension. I mean, the extension is their ending. Okay, so you can have the name of the file and the extension is what follows. Remember, I'm teaching this class for absolute beginners. Okay, so I am trying as much as possible to be very basic. So bear with me if you know something in HTML already and we seem like we are borrowing, you should bear with us and then go along with the pace. It's to help absolute beginners, people who know, who want to start from scratch. Okay. So you have two extensions, alternative that you can use. We have the .atm or .html. Each of them will get you the same result. Now, naming a file index. If I name a file like index.atm, if I name the file, it will display as the home page once I upload to the web server. So if I send a file name index to the web server, if I finish coding, I have a lot of files and I've named one index, the web server automatically identifies that file as the home page based on the default configuration of the web server. That's how it's designed to behave. And but if you don't want that, then you have to change the configuration of its default settings on your web server. Okay. And apart from the home page, which is named index.html, a descriptive name sometimes helps. So you have to use a name that well describes your web page. Okay. So if you have the about, if you have the contact, simply name them that. Don't name them xyz.atm. It makes it difficult for you to identify when you get on your server. Because in your server, you have a folder containing a lot of files that you've created from the HTML. And sometimes you use their names to identify them and to link them properly. Okay. So that's helpful to pick a descriptive name. And that describes what the page does. So an about link can link up to a file called, an about us can link up to a file called about.html. A contact us can link up to a file called contact.html. That's very helpful. Now let's talk about tags. Okay. The word TAG, tags. You meet them a lot. What we've been creating so far, all of these things are called tags. Okay. So this is the HTML tags. Tags are quoted in less than or greater than signs, okay, which sometimes people call angle brackets. Okay. So this is the name of the tag, HTML, and they are quoted in angle brackets. Okay. The difference between an opening and closing tag is that you will find that for a closing tag, in this case, you'll find that for each case you have forward, what do I say? Forward backslash. No, a forward slash before the name of the tag. So the tag name is HTML. The closing tag, the corresponding closing tag has a forward slash before the name of the HTML. So it'll be helpful to note the difference. Okay. So you have tags. Okay. Tags make up the HTML structure. You have closing and opening tags. You have some tags which will come to understand that they are self-closing tags. So let's look at the opening and the closing tags. First, you said there is a tag name here, and it's surrounded by angle brackets or less than or greater than sign. That's the opening tag. Okay. Then your content follows. What you want to appear in the web page follows. Then you have the closing tag. The closing tag also has angle brackets. However, the difference between the opening and the closing tag is that the closing tag has a / beginning the name of the tag. Okay. So let's say if tag name is an example of a tag, then you have this as your opening tag, and you have that as your closing tag. Okay. So I said that the opening and closing tags have the same name. So you can't have an opening tag, for example, you have an opening tag, say, um, head, and you have its corresponding close, automatically close for me. But you can't have it corresponding tag to the title, corresponding closing tag. It should have the same name, tag name. So here, head, that title. And one of the things which makes it helpful is that when I make an error or when I commit an error, what happens is it underlines it to give me sign that I should take a critical look at what I've written. Okay. And you don't get that with tools, other tools. Okay. So if you use the right tool for the right job, it makes your process or your workflow faster, which is a very good thing. Sometimes you need results and you need speed at the same time to deliver those results. And so over here, I said that the opening and closing tags have the same name, right? Which is referred to as the HTML element. So you can have a tag name called title and the closing tag to called, the tag name is the same, title. And we call this the title element in the HTML document. So when I mention the title element, you know, okay, well, this entire thing is a title element. It has, each element has a closing and opening tag, a closing and an opening tag with its content. Some elements do not have a closing tag, and we'll get to them. Okay, we call them self-closing tags. So for the title element, we have this one as its opening tag, which I've already explained, and this one as its closing tag. And I explained to you that / appears before the closing tag's name. Okay, so it's important to note that difference. And more on tags, I made mention that there are tags called self-closing tags. Those tags do not have, they are just, they have the tag, they have the tag name and they close by themselves. They don't have a closing tag. It's because they don't usually have any content at all. So you can see that in our earlier page, we have the tag name, the opening tag, the closing tag, and we have some content between. Those tags control how the content looks, or they control information about the content. However, in self-closing tags, they do not have any content in between them. So you can have only one tag name standing. Okay. And self-closing tags, one of the things which help you identify them is they sometimes have a / at the end of the name, the tag name, at the end of the name. So sometimes you have this showing as this. But in HTML5, I'll explain what HTML5 is, the new or the latest document version of HTML. And once you can use, let's say, you can just have an opening tag for it, and it doesn't have any closing tag. So instead of writing tag name and then / before you close your angle brackets, you can just have the tag name, that is BR, instead of this BR / angle bracket. So it's important to note that difference. You can just write that. And I'll explain to you, let's go demonstrate an example of this thing. So I said over here that welcome to my second website. I want the website to, I want my, what do I say? My website to go on the next line. So I'm going to insert a tag called break, and break is a self-closing tag. We can choose to write it this way in other cases. It's a self-closing tag. Okay, it's a self-closing tag. So when we write this, when we move to our website and we refresh the website, that change is after we refresh the website. So if we want to see any new change, we can simply come and then hit this button. It will reload the page, refresh the page. Okay. If we want to see the source of every web page, what we call something a source. The source is like, what code gives me this website? You can simply type Control U. So inspect page source, view page source. And then it gives you the source of the page. So you can see the code I have written here. Okay. If I go into the source, it will just show me like, and every website has a source. For example, when I go to, let's say, google.com, sometimes the source wouldn't be clear, but let me go to, let's say, CNN.com. Breaking news. Okay, so this is the website of CNN.com. I can simply come and then right click on CNN's page. Right click on the page and say view page source. Okay, so I'm asking it to load the source of the website for me to see what is going on behind the page. So now here's my CS, what do I say, CNN page source. You can see it. I'm seeing a lot of things like link. I'm seeing my HTML tag. I'm seeing some language stuff. I'm seeing a head here. I'm seeing the links in the head. And I'm seeing the closing, where is the closing tag of the head? So they still has some scripts. Okay. So we are seeing meta link. Okay. There are lots of scripts in the head. So let me just try and insert to the page. Find, and I see that click head. Okay, so this is the ending tag of the head. And I can look for the body. Yeah. I want to know where the body begins. Where is the body? Okay. So the body begins here. That's a class, a body, and a class set. So this is like mainly a demo of some of the things that go on behind the scenes in the website. All the user does is the user sees the page itself. It doesn't see the source. But the source is where the code that is shipped to the browser to interpret for the user. So that is where we find stuff as developers. So let's continue. So I said that once I've implemented that, you see that's on the next page. For that same thing, I can come over here and say, second, I want the second to go on the next line. And instead of writing break as br / before I close it, I can simply write the BR in angle brackets this way. BR this. Okay. Then I save it my about, and I can go to my Chrome and reload it. Now you see it works the same way. I just wanted to demonstrate how with the version of HTML5 you can simply write this and it will work. I don't know, it's automatically correcting it, but it should work the same way. Okay. So I've demonstrated a few things using the web browser and the web page to you. Now let's go back. So self-closing tags, that's what I wanted to demonstrate. They have an image tag, which could be self-closing. Let's put an example of an image in our website. So let's say we have an image we find very cool. Let's say we come to this site and say, I want us to fetch any image online, flowers. Let's go to google.com and look for flowers. So let's say these flowers, I like them. And I'll copy the link of our image and come and put them in our source code. See if it reflects on that. So another self-closing tag we have is, so let's say now that I'm done demonstrating with this stuff, I'll come here and then say, I want an image, not in my page head, that I want an image file, image source. So you can see that this, as I hit it, it gave me the source, which I can just put here. There's the source of my file. The alternate text will come to it and say flowers. Okay. Then I can come to my Finder and then go to my desktop, go to my classes, and see in my experiments now, open this file, the about file, open with Firefox. So we come here and we have our nice flower inserted in our website. And this is an example of a self-closing tag, okay? Because as you can see, this tag doesn't have a closing tag. It's just an IMG tag that self-closes itself, okay? It doesn't have a corresponding closing tag. We call such tags self-closing tags, okay? So it's really important to understand that there are tags that are known as self-closing tags, okay? Now let's take a look at, so far we mentioned opening tags. We spoke about closing tags. So some tags have opening and closing tags, and in between is the content of the tag. Then we also make mention of self-closing tags. Okay? Tags that close themselves. They don't have an opening and closing. You see one line of them. And an example is inserting an image, breaking. There are several of them, but we'll get to them. You'll see things like meta, you'll see things like links. They are all part of examples of self-closing tags. Now let's look at something very important called tag attributes. Okay, attribute is like the characteristics. Okay, attribute is like the characteristics. So the tag element, the tag name For example, what we saw in the image. Now let's focus our energy on this image. Okay. We are pulling this image directly from another website called ebayimg.com. And it's not advisable to, we call this hot linking. Hot linking is where you pull an image directly from another person's server or website on where you are streaming from their server. So they have posted the image on their files. They are paying for the resources, and you just grab the link and you use on your website, and you are not paying for that resource. So the flower image doesn't reside on your website, it resides on their website. They are paying for that resource, and you are not paying, and you are just linking, and then your viewers can see the image that is hosted on their website. We call that hot linking, and hot linking is illegal. Actually, hot linking is illegal according to internet laws. So you don't go and then fetch another person's image and then the linking from their website when they are paying for it. Okay, that is hot linking, and it can be illegal. And so what you do is you have to have a folder that contains your images. Okay, so we'll demonstrate that first. Now we are viewing this image from their website. We'll pick that image and then put in a folder. Also, we have desktop here. We have go into my classes and then experiment. And I want to create a new folder where I put images. Okay, so I name it IMG. That's my folder, right? And create. And inside the folder, I want to save the file. There. And this file, I want to give it a name flower or flower1.jpg. And once I hit enter, we can find it. We should be able to find it on in our Finder there. So now our image has been saved. So there is an example of our server. If we need to view this image on our website, then we should upload this to our server and pay for the resources from our server. We pay for hosting that image in our server. We don't use another person's images or their resources or their script unless it's a service that has been provided the right to do that. Or unless maybe it's a streaming service and they give you access to certain scripts for free. Other than that, if you use their resources, you can be sued. It's called hot link on the internet, which is not acceptable. So this time we say, okay, we don't like to do hot linking. So the source of our image, we want to control it from our server. Now, if I don't specify any source, okay, if I don't specify any source, I save this and I don't specify any source. Let's go and see what happens to my website when I click it. I haven't specified any source of the image, so it doesn't show up here, right? Now I want to specify the source of my image here as, okay, now go into my images folder and look for flower1.jpg, right? Look for this thing. Now, when I save it here, I'm no longer hot linking from their website. I am streaming directly from my website. So it's saved this way. Okay, saved this way. And we are talking about attributes. So I wanted to make this clear that, look, this is the tag name. This is the IMG is the tag name, right? The other words that are added to the tag name are known as attributes. They control certain characteristics of this element, the image or the IMG element. Okay? And so I can say the source, specify the source from here. I can change the source and then say, no, specify it from this server. Do that, do this, do that. And the alternate text is like, it shows what should show up if your image doesn't show up. or if your image is taking a long time to show up, what should show up? And you can also add the width of the image. Maybe I want to control the size. Initially, my size of the image was too big. It was occupying a lot of space. So I want to control the size of my website. I can set an attribute called width. Okay. Width is the attribute of image, img. Okay. It's the characteristics of image. I can set it to, let's say, 400 pixels, and I can set a height of 400 pixels as well. And if I save this, now we should have an image that has characteristics, certain attributes set to it. Like it should have a height of 400 pixels and it should have a width 400 pixels. And these are our image. Okay, so the attributes added to a tag, the attributes actually added to a tag kind of controls its characteristics. So you have the tag name, let's say img, then you have an attribute, maybe width, then the setting. You can have a setting like 400, you can have any setting that belongs to that particular attribute. Okay. And the tag name is written first, then their attributes follow. Okay. The tag name is written first and the attributes follow. So I made this example here that, okay, well, you can have an img as a tag name here, and you have its source. You should go into your images folder and then specify the image dp dot. Yeah, you should fetch that image for dp.jpg. And you want that dp.jpg to display at a 200 pixels height and a 150 pixel width. Okay. So these are ways which you can control certain behaviors of the tag or the element. The HTML element, you can have some characteristics in there or attributes in there that control its behavior. Okay, and these are known as tag attributes. Okay. Over here, I said that SRC, source, height, width. So source, height, width are attributes of the image tag, with the source specifying the location of the image, that is dp.jpg. And then you have the height controlling and the width controlling the dimension. Okay. And ideally, when you want to control the appearance of an element, you should do it in your CSS file. And it's best practice. And we'll explain why that should be, unless maybe you want to target it very locally or very specifically. Okay. So these are ways which tag attributes can influence the behavior of the tag itself. So the tag name is there, but it can have certain attributes that influence or control the behavior of that particular tag. Okay. Now let's look at HTML, the structure of HTML that we wrote. So over here, the content displayed, where you want your content. First, we have an opening tag for HTML. We have a closing tag for the HTML, and we have the head, right? And the head contains the title tags. So we have the closing tag of the body and the closing tag of the body. The body contains your content, what you want displayed on the website. So any content you want displayed on the website is placed in your body, not in your head. The head contains what we call metadata and the title. Now, what we mean by metadata is that metadata kind of describes the document itself, but it doesn't show the content of the document. It describes that, oh, this document contains this, and this is very useful to search engines. Okay, search engines. So search engines will index your website or will index your web pages, so that when someone searches something in Google, it will find your page and then fetch it for it. Now, the indexing is influenced by metadata, okay, and the titles and stuff that goes into the head. So the head is mainly, the content that are in the head is mainly for describing that particular document that lives on your server. When the search engine comes, it will not go through the body. Yeah, it will just focus its energy on your head. Okay. And the title and the metadata tags will tell it what the document is about. That, oh, okay, there's a website saying this, saying that. There's just a description of the website so that when a user types in the gospel that who types in Google that I want a website that displays flowers, because it has read in your description, which is in your head, or in your metadata, which is in your head, that your website contains images of flowers, it will fetch that particular web page and send to the user, send to the user. So that's very helpful to understand that what we put in the head often doesn't display in our content. What we see here is, as you can see, is in welcome to our website, and these flowers are welcoming flowers. They are found in the body. Okay, so you can see these are found in the body. Welcome to our website, the image tag here. The head, what we have here is not being seen here. Okay. So we can have metadata like metadata is self-closing. So I can have a name, car sets 8. Okay. It's just telling it the characteristics, the character sets it should implement. Yeah. And so these are examples. If I go and refresh my page, let's say if I come here and refresh my page, even though I've added the metadata, you won't see it as the content. But when I come into the source, my source, so if I come into my source by clicking Command U or Control U, then you see my metadata has been added. But it wasn't displayed on my website. It wasn't displayed as a content on my website. But when the search engine is indexing my page, it will use that information to help it understand my page better. So that's how come you need to understand that, okay, well, each part of the structure does something. The head contains information that describes your web page for the search engines. It's not described, it doesn't show up on your website. However, you have the body tag, content in the body tag showing up on your website. So I said over here that only content inside the body tag over here, which is shown in the light gray region. This one will display the about me will display, simple HTML structure will be displayed by the browser. However, things like the title, the metadata that I put, and there are several metadata you can put to do certain things for you, to do specific things for you. But they will be used by your search engine and they will be used by other devices, information. So think of it that the head contains information for describing your document and not showing or not displaying the visual content of your document. Okay. So let's now focus on elements and the building blocks of HTML. Elements or the building blocks of HTML. Now it's crucial to understand that all of these are made up of tags. I told you that. So if we come into our Visual Studio Code, let's keep it as basic as possible. So I'll take out certain things that are kind of complex for us or complicate things. We want to keep our code very basic so that and all of this will display, like I said, image tag will display all right. Welcome to our website will display all right. However, if we add more attributes, that's more things. Okay. So in HTML5, one very important thing is you see that we have to declare the document type or the doc type. Okay, so I want to do that first. And HTML5, which our conversations will follow around, declares a doc type this way, that you bring angle brackets, then you bring an exclamation sign, then you write doc type in capital, and you just write HTML here. When you do that, you have declared the documents to set browsers, to set engines, that there is an HTML5 document. So treat it as such. So let's, with this saved, when we get back into our browser, we will, because we remove the attributes that control the behavior of the image tag, once we refresh, now they are gone back to the default services. So the default size is what we find here. And so let's go back to our basic HTML code, which we've written here. Now, let's look at this. Let's say the head tag. I've closed up the head tag. And you can do all of this. When I come here, you see there's a collapsible button. Closes the body tag. And so I have a structure like an HTML, right? An HTML here. I have a head and I have a body. And they are not going anywhere. I've just collapsed them. Okay. They are not going anywhere. I've just collapsed them. Now, this is the head element. This entire thing is the head element. That entire thing is the body element. These are the building blocks of HTML. When I come and open it up, this thing is like the header part, the heading. It's a heading. It's a heading tag. H2 is a heading tag. We have H1 to like H6. Okay, these are all heading tags. H1 is the biggest heading, followed by H6 is the smallest heading. So, but we'll get into all of that as we move along. So don't worry your head much about some of these things. And these form the elements of your web page. So this is the H2 element, that's the IMG element, that's the body element, that's the HTML element. And these have certain behaviors in the body. Okay. The building blocks of HTML have, so when you talk about elements, the focus here is on the body, what happens inside the body and how they behave. Okay. How they behave. So let's insert a paragraph here after the heading say before our image shows up. So I can just write P for paragraphs and say this is our first website. We intend to build this to last. So this is a simple paragraph we created. Another way you can create a paragraph in a text editor or a code editor is to use after you've written P, if you need some content, you can say Lorem 10. And when I write Lorem 10, it gives me 10 lines of if you've used any, okay, so this is for absolute beginners. So Lorem Ipsum is a text generating website, which I can show you. You can go there and then copy dummy text. Actually, that's what happens. So I can open this website and go to a Lorem generator. It's for, so as you can see, Lorem Ipsum generator, and it's for generating dummy text, which you can use in your website if you don't have the actual text yet. So you can specify the number of paragraphs you want, the number of words you want. If you want 5 words, it will give you 5 words. If you want list, it will give you a list. So you can do all of that and say, start generating. So I need a paragraph. I want a paragraph, one paragraph. So I can just generate a lorem ipsum and it will give me the paragraph. And I can copy the paragraph here and put in my website to make it look cool. So I come here and in my paragraph website, in my paragraph, I can just paste it here. And when I go and then save, so if now it's pasted the lorem ipsum, when I save and then go back to my website, I can refresh and I see that lorem ipsum contents here. This is a process I need to go to the lorem ipsum website, get the dummy text, come and paste back. This can be done in a very short way in a code editor. And most code editors have it. So let me undo this. I can simply write lorem. And when I write lorem and I hit tab, it generates some lorem ipsum content for me, which I can use in my website. So I can save this and then simply go back to my website and hit refresh. And here's my lorem text. And I can control the number of words I want for my lorem. So I can come back here and say, give me 150 characters of lorem. So I say lorem 150 like this directly. And when I hit tab, these are exactly 150 words. Okay. And I can go back to my website and when I refresh, it gives me 150 words exactly. 150 characters. So that's how it works. And it's a very cool tool which you can use for programming stuff. Okay. So that's lorem, a demonstration of lorem ipsum for you. And this is where the rubber meets the road because sometimes when you are designing, you don't have all the content you need yet. And you have to place dummy text there to see how the structure works. Okay. So it's a very cool thing to understand. All right. So that was just a demonstration of how you can generate some dummy paragraph for your website, okay, using lorem. So let me repeat again. You just hit your paragraph task and just use the word lorem and specify the words you want. Like let's say you want 50 words, or you can if you leave it, it will give you the default content. So if I hit this tab, it will give me the default number. If I want to restrict it, I just specify a number of items there. And if I want specific number of things to lines to, I can say lorem 3 lines. And it's giving me exactly 3 lines. Okay. For 3 lines. Okay. So it's a very cool tool which you can use. And that's why I say use the right tool for the right job. It makes your process faster. So when I come here and then I hit it, it gives me that exactly number of lines I want in my code. So we're done with explaining what lorem is or lorem ipsum with, and it's for paragraphs. I mean, you need dummy text for your paragraphs, you can use that. And when you do that, these are called building blocks of HTML. The building blocks there. So let's get a lorem of a single line. So we have a single line of lorem. We come to, just for demonstration purposes, okay, we want to demonstrate how these elements work. So now we have, welcome to my second website. This is our first, oh, I said, welcome to my second, I said this is our first website. in the conflicts, let me just write, we intend to make this website. So we intend to build this to last. Okay, then I have some more. I want to demonstrate what HTML elements and how they behave. How they behave. It's important to understand these things because you need to understand the behavior of the elements on your web page and know the structure. So I said elements are more like the building blocks of your HTML page. And each element consists of an opening and closing tags. Now we know what opening and closing tags are, which wraps our content, if any. I need to specify here that if any, because sometimes our tags do not have content, and we call them self-closing tags, like the image tag we saw. Okay. Now there are three classifications of the HTML building blocks. We can have them at the block level elements, we can have them as an inline level element, and we can have them as empty or void elements. Okay, so with the block level, we'll talk about their characteristics, how they behave on the website. With the inline level, we'll also explain how they behave on the website. And the empty or the void elements too, will explain how they behave on the website. Now, at least we have some tests, we have some content on our website, so we can use them to demonstrate some of these things. Block level elements are elements that start on a new line and take up the full width if available. Okay. I'll explain this to you on the web page. Now, I came to my welcome to the website, okay, block level element. This is the width of my page. For demonstration purposes, this is kind of the width on my page, current width on my page. The width can vary. Okay? My width can vary. Mobile devices have less. My width can vary. So they have less width. Desktop devices have a very high width. So I want us to use this to demonstrate. When we come to our code editor, welcome to our first website is a heading. It's an H2 heading. Heading tags are block level elements. Block level elements means that if I write a heading and I want another paragraph to follow, this one is going to take the entire width. The H2 is going to take the current entire width I have on my page. So it's going to extend from this side all the way to the end of it. Any other element can't climb over. Any other element can't climb over, or it won't accept any other element on that entire way. It will block it out totally. Okay, that's why we call them block level. If they are inline level elements, they can accept other elements to other. And I'll demonstrate that. Let's say that we have, instead of having a paragraph, we have, so paragraphs too are block level elements. So you can see how they are behaving here. This paragraph took the entire width, and that paragraph has also taken this entire width, depending on their content. Okay. The first paragraph took the entire width. The second paragraph has also taken the entire width, depending on their content. So these paragraphs, H2 elements, heading elements, division elements, they are all block level elements. And so they take up the entire width. That's what we mean by elements that start on a new line and take up the full width available. Their behavior is that it creates a block or a box. That's and we can explain what we mean by it creates a block. It can contain other block level or inline elements. So I can have other block level elements inside. It accepts width, height, and margins and padding. We understand these things when we get into our CSS. Okay. We understand these things when we get into our CSS. But for the sake of demonstration purposes, we'll go deep into some of these things. For the sake of HTML class, we'll go deep into some of these things. So we said some examples are divs. A div is like a division of the page. For a container that holds elements. Paragraph is one of them, H1 to H6. I earlier mentioned that we have heading. And H1 is the largest heading. H6 is the smallest heading. That's how it works. And headings are also important. The type of headings you select are also important to search engines because when they come into your page, they kind of index your page according to these levels of heading. So it will consider H1 heading as a very important heading of the page. You consider an H6 element as a very sub heading of the page. So it's important to understand some of these things as well. And UL is for unordered list items, and we'll demonstrate some of these items, list items and stuff. We'll demonstrate all of them. Okay. So, and sections we'll demonstrate as we go. So these are block level elements. Block level elements, they take up the entire width of the website, of the web page. Now, if let's say I come to this particular website, which is controlled on this page, and I come here and then paragraph is a block level element. I come here to change it to a span, right? And I come here to change this also to a span. A span is an inline level element. So let's look at how a span behaves. If I change this and this to a span, at first they were paragraphs, they were taking their own space. So let's see, this was taking its own width. It was taking the entire width for itself. Lauren too was taking the entire width. But if I come save these changes, and I go to refresh the page, because they are inline level elements, now they are able to reside within the same width. Okay, they are able to reside within the same width. So inline level elements are able to reside inline at the same level with each other. Block level elements, they push the next item onto the next line. Okay, but if I decide to make one of them a paragraph, because one of them becomes a block level, like let's say P, this Lauren text, I decide to make it a P because it now becomes a block level element. It will push other things out of its way. So when we come here, instead of Lauren being in line with other things, now Lauren is a block level element. So when I refresh it, let's see what happens. You see, it has pushed other items out of its way, both the one at the top and the one beneath. Okay. So it's very important to understand some of these concepts. What we mean by block level elements, what we mean by inline level elements. So I said that block level elements start on a new line and takes up the full width. We create a block for every other person, okay, or for every other element on the web page. And they can contain other block level elements or inline. And I explained to you how we can use span and how we can use other items. Okay. Let's look at inline level element or inline element. We demonstrated how inline elements can reside on the same line. Okay, so they don't push other elements away from their width. They accept other widths to come along inline. And we demonstrate with the use of span. We said that, okay, even though the appearance visually doesn't change, span and this text, when you change the paragraph, let's say if I change this to P and I change this to P, we wouldn't see a difference between the appearances that they are changing. They seem to be on the same side and they seem to be, but if I go into the background and then decide to change this to a span, and I decide to change, no, that's my heading. I don't want to tamper with my heading. So let's maintain. I decide to change this to a span, and I decide to change this to a span as well. What's going to happen is, even though I've written this and they seem to be on different, because this span element and that span element are inline level elements, they'll be able to reside on the same way. So when one completes its journey, the other will automatically follow. So we have this here. When one completes its journey, the other automatically, Lauren will join up and then follow. They can be on the same line. Okay, that's what we mean by inline elements. So inline elements do not start a new line, and they only take up the necessary way. So once they are done, then that ends it. Their behavior is that they flow within text and content, and they cannot set a height directly, and usually contains the text and other inline elements. So it's also important to understand what block level elements are, what inline level elements are. And one of the things we can also look at is empty elements. I told you empty elements. We call these empty elements because they don't have any content. Empty elements do not have a closing tag. That's what we often call self-closing tags. Okay. So the behavior is that they are self-closing. For example, this image. Okay. And they are used for embedding media line breaks or metadata links. So this is the tag for embedding an image. Here is the tag for embedding line break. That's if you want to move to the next line. HR is the tag for horizontal rule, which is like inserting a ruler that divides one page from the other. We can just input is for form element, and we'll get to that side. Metadata input is for form element. They reside in the body. Metadata is a tag that is used for describing your HTML documents to search engines and other devices. Then we have link to. Link to is also found in the header, or the head file. So we have link and we have meta in the head file. We have input, HR, PR, img, all in the body of the link. And these are known as empty elements or void elements. Okay. And let's demonstrate how they work. Now, let's mix up the concept of understanding what block level elements are. So block level elements, like I said, if we create this and we put this in a div, like we intend to make this last. Once we have put it in a div, it becomes a block level element. So it will push other elements out of its way. So when we come here and then we load, you can see it has pushed other elements out of its way. It's now in a division. And it's able to accept, earlier on we said that block level elements can accept a width or a height. Okay, margins and padding. Let's try that out and then see how it looks. Usually it's not even advisable to. So let's say, for you to target these things, sometimes you have to, let me give this a class of just to demonstrate something. Okay. Or a weight of 600 and a height of 40. I'm just trying to demonstrate something. So if you want to, what we mean by they are able to accept a width and a height is that, and padding is that sometimes you want to control how your your CSS looks or how your styles look, how your page looks. And you do that by using an appearance. And you can have a style which resides in the head, a style tag called style. And inside the styles, you can select an item and maybe give it a name like a style of heading paragraph or heading. I just want to give it that name. Heading. I come in there and then say, for heading, my background should be for heading, my background color should be black. Black is written 000. My text or my color, just say color, should be white. Should be white. These are for demonstrate. Again, it's not to get too technical. And I can give it the width and the height. My width should be in my height. I can decide not to even specify the height. 600 pixels. All right. So for demonstration purposes, now I have given certain attributes that whenever you see an ID, an element with an ID element, give an element with an ID called header, give it these properties. Okay. This is called CSS. And we won't get into much of CSS, but for the sake of the div that I wrote, block level elements can be given special attributes or special behaviors. And so, like I say, an ID should have heading. Okay. Once I do that, I'm specifying that we intend this to last should have these characteristics. The background should be black, its color should be white, and the width of that should be 600 pixels. So even though the website has an entire page, if I refresh that, it only comes up to 6. So now we can really see what is happening in here, right? In here. We can see that the width has been controlled to 600 pixels. If I refuse to set any width and then come back here, it will take up the entire width. So that's why we say block level elements, they take up the entire width available. Okay. So because it's a block level element, it's going to take up the entire width. If I can control the width, I can set a pattern. So if I want it to look better, I can set a pattern of, let's say, pattern of 50, no, 20 pixel all over. But I say that internally the words around the words give me some space, some pattern around it. When I refresh it, now you can see that it's now setting a pattern around it. It's a block level element. And block level elements, so you can see that it's ending here. When I refresh it, it will take the space of what is available. Okay. So it's really cool to understand some of these things very well because because it's a block level element, you can do some of these things. But let's say if I had a span, let's see if let's see what happens to my span. So let's say if I have this and I have a span here. Now I've set this as a span, that as a span. They are supposed to lie in the same, what do I say? They are supposed to lie in the same line because both of them are inline level elements. So you see what is happening. So now I see that this span takes up to a certain level, but because it's an inline element, other items can also creep along, or they can also climb up the same line. Okay. So that's the main difference between like block level elements and inline level elements. And finally, with our with our image tag, which is considered like a self-closing of, we call it what do I say? A void, an empty element. It's called an empty element because look at the span. The span has a closing and the opening. It has an opening tag and a closing tag here. It has some content here. Okay. But this image tag doesn't have any content. Okay. So we call such tags we do not have content as empty elements or void elements. Okay. And they can also be controlled with the CSS. I can come here and then say in my styles, for every image you see, do something particular. Set the width, set the height. So instead of coming here to say, at first we set the height and width in the image tag. Okay, in the image tag. Best practice, you should set your height and width in your CSS, your style sheet. So I can say image, or I can give it a class and say, this flower, one ID flower, do something. Okay. And then come to the flower and then say, give it a width of 400 pixel. Give it a height of 400 pixel. And now we go and then apply that ID. We go and apply that ID to the image. Say image should have an ID of flower. And once we are done, now we are seeing, but look, an IMG is also an inline element. So now it's wrapping along with all the other elements. If you want to display it as a block level element, we have to specify that this flower should display as a block level. As a block level element. So that it will, in a way, pave way, it will let other content pave way for it to stand alone. So when I display that as a block level element, now you can see that it separated itself. So it's really cool to understand how these level of elements work. Okay, block level element. So we started by saying, okay, there are three forms. We can pick three formats. We can have block level, we can have inline level element, then we can have empty or void level elements or void elements. Okay. These are the building blocks of HTML. And we said that now divs, paragraphs, H1 to H6, UL, LI, UL stands for on order list, LI stands for list item. Section, we'll come into all of that. They are block level elements. And we said span, A is for links. So if you want to write a link to open another page, let's say I have this. Now my page is getting a little messy, so I'll make all of them block level elements. Okay. I have this. Let's say I give it a paragraph, right? Paragraph. Give this one a paragraph. I'll have some block level elements showing up. So we have block level elements. Now, our page looks a little more organized. Now that we've done all of these things, I want to say that it's important that if you want a link to show up in your page, you can do that. A is a form of a link. All of these are inline level elements. They can be inside the block level elements, and we'll demonstrate how we use this strong and emphasize IMG. So we've seen IMG before, we've seen break before, we've seen span before. A is for links. If you want to click a link to open another page, you can do that. So in our folder, we have about containing this. If you want to get to our home page, it's called index. So we'll try and create a link that goes back to index when we click them. Now, this is a what do I say? A link. It's a paragraph. We have paragraphs here. We can put a link in there, and we say that go back home. Okay. So that's what we want to do here. So for a link tag, you simply use the word A, right? A stands for a link tag. And it has an href. Href is hypertext reference. Hypertext reference or hyperlink reference. And you can specify where it should go to. So this is where I want the link to go to when it's clicked. Okay. The page to move to when it's clicked. So I want index.atm. I want that file. And I say, go back to our home page. That's what I want the link to read. This is where I want it to go. href is the attribute of the tag A. It has an opening and closing tag. The contents, there is the content. What I want displayed. Where I want it to go is the href. Okay. And once I save that, I can come back to our website and then refresh, and I see it here. When I click here, see it goes back to the initial page we created. This is our first page. That's our home page. And I can also put another link which sends me to our about page over here. Okay, I can do that over here. All right, so there is a demonstration of how to use links. And you can also have strong is for making text bold. Emphasis is for making text italics. Okay, so italicizing words for emphasis. So I can say Lorem Ipsum because it's this thing. I want to make that very bold and say Lorem Ipsum. I want the Lorem Ipsum to be bold. So I use the word strong, the tag strong, opening and closing. When I hit refresh, then I go back to my page. Now, when I refresh this, see, this is made bold. That's how we make something bold on a website. And if you want it italicized, let's say, welcome to our second website. Second, we want it italicized. Use emphasis, EM. So EM, the EM tag makes, when I put the content as second here, it makes second emphasized or italic. So this is where, welcome to my second website. So now you can see the difference after I refresh. Okay. So these are, remember that, okay, we have a tag in a P tag, inside a P tag. The P or the paragraph tag is a block level element, right? The H2 tag is a block level element, but it has an inline level element in it. Very often you find that inline level elements, some inline level elements are dwelling in a block level element. And it's okay because they don't affect, the inline level element don't affect the structure of the other content. But the block level elements will push other content away from it. So that is important to really understand. So we've spoken about all these level of elements, the block level elements, the inline elements, and the empty elements. And I'll say these are the basics of the structure of an HTML document. So it's very important to really understand this structure, okay? This structure. And it's the basic structure of an HTML document. For every HTML document you build, you see the declaration at the top. The declaration. By a declaration, I mean what type of HTML document. So over here, when we come into our Visual Studio Code, we have, so I'm cleaning it up back to the very, very, very basics. It doesn't have any style. It doesn't have any, very, very, very basic. Okay. So that it can be very legible to all of us. So now I'm cleaning all the things we've done with our web page. With a very basic HTML page we wrote. So let's say we wrote H2 tag and we said that the H2 tag contains this website is cool. Okay. So once that has been published, let's look at the structure, the very important structure of an HTML document. So for demo purposes, this is known as the declaration of the document type. The declaration of the document type. You are declaring what kind of document. When you write doc type HTML, it's considered as an HTML5 document, which is the latest version of HTML. Okay. And you start by opening your HTML tag and closing it up because they have opening tags and the closing tags. Then inside, when you open the head tag, inside the head tag, you have a title tag, and you may have other metadata tags, which we'll go into further on. Okay, which we'll go into further on. When we start to focus on the head tag, there are lots of tags that can come in between the head tags. Metadata tags, you can have link tags like the CSS, you can have style tags. All of these tags can exist in here, but I want you to understand the basic structure of an HTML document. Then you move into the body. Now with the body tag, that's where you have content which you want displayed on your website or on your web page. Okay. And you can have several other tags as well. And we'll get more into these tags as we go along the way. So the first thing is get the structure, your HTML declaration, and open your HTML tags, open your head tags. Inside the head tags, put metadata, put your title, put your links in there, put your script in there. Things that the search engine need to know, or links that, or resources that you need to fetch from other places for your website, put them there. Then inside the body tag, put your content in here. Okay. That's a very a short way of introducing HTML. This is just an introduction. In our next lesson, our conversation will focus more on HTML, which is the latest version of HTML. And I'll keep it as simple as possible because I intend this class for absolute beginners, people who are starting from scratch and really really understand how things work. And I hope this class or this lesson was very basic. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up. And you can send me an email, which I'll leave in my description later, or WhatsApp, or contact me anyway. Okay, I'll leave the description of my contact details in there. I wish you all the best. You've started a new journey with HTML. In the next classes, as I said, we'll get more into HTML5. We'll look at the head, what really goes into the head, the metadata, the script, and the style tags. Then we look at the body, what goes into the body, semantic and non-semantic. And then we look at HTML forms. And for each lesson, I try to keep it as basic as possible. And for you to get a very good import of the message. If you still have questions, just let me know. I wish you all the best as we go along this journey with HTML.